On today's episode of Locked On Canadiens, with Owen Beck being sent back to Laval, what is the plan for the fourth line?
You're Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome everyone to episode 1230 of Locked On Canadiens. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day and for subscribing wherever you get your podcast. Doing that supports the show and ensures you do not miss an episode. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's game time. And Laura, it's also time to get into your Montreal Canadiens on an off day. My name is Ian Boisvert, also known as @Megazine, and I'm joined by Laura Sabo, also known as the Active Stick. Laura, how are things treating you today on this, Wednesday as we're recording this?
Well, it's cold. It's apparently the
Freezing?
coldest day of the year. That's what I've been told. I don't know. It just feels like the last few days have been. So you see the Udi out. The Udi only comes out for special reasons, whether it's a holiday, a really late game, or apparently now I'm freezing. So that's why. But I'm excited to talk about this fourth line because the Canadiens did something I was not expecting.
Yeah, definitely an unexpected move on Wednesday morning. We'll get into that and talk about maybe what the Canadiens are thinking for that fourth line moving forward until Emil Heineman comes back. Brendan Gallagher is set to play in his 800th career NHL game. We'll talk just kind of a retrospective on his career, where he started, where he is now, and potentially what his future is with this team. And, this is a Montreal Canadiens podcast, but there's a really weird story going on in Edmonton with Connor McDavid being suspended and the Oilers releasing a very weird statement. We'll try to parse our way through that story and try to figure out, is this the new standard for how this will be handled moving forward? But we start in Montreal, where this show should always start. And it starts with an announcement that Owen Beck had been sent back to Laval. They did not make an alternate call-up, so the immediate thought was, well, Michael Pezzetta's got to come back in, and that was confirmed. So on Thursday in Detroit, Michael Pezzetta will be back in the lineup for the Montreal Canadiens. Marty said, essentially, we will go with what we have. There was no corresponding move. Your thoughts on this? I mean, we talked about Owen Beck not really making much of a difference, and that's not to criticize him. It's just to point out the point in his career that he's at right now. He's not a difference maker at the NHL level. What are your thoughts on these sort of roster machinations that the Canadiens are making?
Machinations is such a great word.
Thank you.
It was not a surprise that Owen Beck was being sent down. What was surprising was nobody else was called up, because what I had assumed was that this was a series of auditions, right? Or cups of coffee. And again, like, Owen Beck has played a total of 3 NHL games in his entire career, right? He's doing really well in Laval. He's going to continue to do that. I don't see Owen Beck being, with the NHL team until at least next year, right? Mm-hmm. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that, but I really did think someone else was going to get a call. And the fact that they called up Owen Beck as opposed to, Condotta made me feel like this was a series of cups of coffee / auditions. And so the fact that they said no, and then I was thinking about that and I was like, was this a message to Michael Pezzetta to be better? Is Michael Pezzetta going to get another audition? Is there something particular about the Detroit lineup that requires a Michael Pezzetta as opposed to an Owen Beck? Particularly since you already have an Arbor Jack guy on the ice to be the police, the general police sheriff, whatever you want to call him. I wasn't sure why they wouldn't just give Davidson a chance.
Yeah, or anyone else, call up a Raphael Harvey-Pinard who has NHL experience, and kind of we thought he would be on this team had he not gotten injured over the summer.
Yeah.
Maybe Barry Boulet, call him up. There are options. I think just my reaction to this and my reaction to watching Owen Beck play for Montreal over the last few games and watching Michael Pezzetta play for the Montreal Canadiens before that on the fourth line is that it does not matter, because that is Josh Anderson's B-roll is playing on that fourth line. The lineup, when it gets released before the game, that's all well and good. Look, Owen Beck's there. Michael Pezzetta's there. When the game gets tough, it is Josh Anderson on that line. Even before those points in the game, Anderson is rotating in on that line. Nick Suzuki took shifts on that line. It's a fourth line by committee, quite honestly, because I just feel like Marty doesn't Marty doesn't really want anybody else in that spot because they can't bring what Heineman was bringing at the time. Again, that line is an example of a line that the sum is greater than its parts. And I think they're having a really hard time filling that with somebody who hasn't been with the team the entire season, right? That's why Anderson is a great fit there because he's been here all year, right?
Right. Right, and that makes sense, and there's a lot to be said for the chemistry. I just thought of a thing the Canadians should do is since they're gonna be playing Anderson or Nick Suzuki or whoever rotating that spot anyway, they should auction off the name in the lineup for charity so that you and I can pay and we can be in the starting lineup of the Montreal Canadiens. Call
Yeah,
me
there you go.
charity ideas. Like and follow for more charity ideas. Uh, I just think it's a wasted opportunity really to give someone else a shot just because we know that Emil Heineman was doing magical things on that line. We know that together, they had created something really special that was, that was one of the reasons for the Canadians being in games, if not winning games at certain points, right? So in the absence of that, you're never going to have a perfect scenario. You're never going to have what you want. And yes, we saw yesterday, like it was really effective throwing Josh Anderson in there towards the end of the game. Yes, that's great. You can also do that while giving someone in Laval a shot. And so for
Yeah.
me, it just feels like a wasted opportunity. But at the same time, does this signify that the Canadians are comfortable with the roster they're playing right now? Does this signify that the Canadians are like, yes, this is a good team. It's a complete team. We're happy. We're just going to wait it out until Heineman comes back because that's what good teams do. They don't do too much tweaking and blending.
Yeah, you don't want to commit yourself to a player like for example, I mentioned Barre Boulet and I mentioned Raphael Harvey Pinard. If you call up those guys, I think it's 10 games or 30 days, and they have to go through waivers again in order to go back to Laval. So that's the game you play, right? You commit to one of these guys short term. He plays really well. You keep him in there until Heineman's back. Well, what if Heineman's not back before those other conditions are met? Then you risk losing a guy on waivers. We know that matters to the Canadians because otherwise they would have waived Michael Pezzetta by now, right? They would have had him playing games in Laval instead of being in waiver jail. It's just essentially where he is. The Canadians don't want to play him on a regular basis, but they also don't want to lose him for nothing. This is a situation where I think Caden Primo found himself in earlier this season before the Canadians had to do something because his role was too important. But this is a situation where the waiver rules are actually hurting these guys, right? They're
Right.
hurting their ability to play. They're not hurting their wallet because they get to collect an NHL paycheck while they're here. I'm sure that doesn't bother them at all, but they're professionals. They want to play.
Yeah.
So I think I'm also at a point with this where their insistence on playing the guys who are already there on the fourth line tells me that they would really like to keep Yoel Armia and they would really like to keep Jake Evans because they care so much about how that line is playing that
Yes.
they don't want why would you go into next season with anything else? In
Right.
everyone's like, well, give someone in Laval a shot to play on the fourth line. Like, is that the best use of their development time? Shouldn't they just be playing on the first line in Laval?
Right.
I'm thinking people kept saying call up Joshua Waugh to play on the fourth line in Montreal. Is that worth it? Waugh is hurt
Yeah.
right now, so obviously he's not an option. But that's sort of the mentality that I have is I think they really love their bottom six, and I think they want to keep it to a certain extent.
And I don't disagree. I love their bottom six too.
Yeah.
um, it's just for me, like this just seems like an opportunity to just give someone a chance. And also like, keep them motivated. And either way, you're gonna rotate out. Either way, that guy's gonna play. I don't know. I don't know how many minutes Owen Beck played last night. I can't be, you know,
It's not a lot.
exactly like 4 minutes. I have no idea. But that's what I'm saying. If you're gonna do that anyway, 6 minutes, 7 minutes, whatever it is, like give somebody a shot. Like have him, go on a road trip with Nick Suzuki, right?
Yeah.
That to me is really the only thing. But other than that, I think they must be feeling really positive that Emil Heineman is going to come back on schedule.
Yeah, no, they must. And again, like as much as the fourth line has been important to them and important to their success, it's not the same kind of drag that it was to not have a backup goalie, right? That was a different scenario with Caden Primo. They They couldn't keep riding Montembeault the way they were. They needed to make a move there. Right now, they don't really need to do anything, right? They're winning. They're winning despite the fact that they haven't had Emil Heineman, and they've been, like I said, it's been a fourth line by committee. I shouldn't even say fourth line by committee. That one winger spot has been by committee. So it's not killing them. I think that they just ride this out and hope that Heineman comes back on time. The Canadiens have been, under their new medical staff, have been very good at getting players back within the exact timelines that they list, right? They've been very, very good at it.
Is me knocking on wood. This better be actual wood.
Nah, come on. Don't buy that. They've been very correct in their assessment of how injured these players are, right? I think that's the leap that's been made there in that department, in my estimation. So I feel like they feel pretty confident that Heineman will be back within that 3 to 4 week, give or take a few days, right?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, we'll leave the fourth line there. And when we come back, we are going to mention another player of that bottom six on the third line now, Brendan Gallagher, who's set to play his 800th career NHL game today. And we'll get into all that in just a minute. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings. Whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs, FanDuel has you covered. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's FanDuel.com. Make this season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, Laura, we are back. And we are back to sort of, I guess, give a player his flowers who really deserves one. We talked about the quarter century teams that the NHL released, and Brendan Gallagher was on the Canadiens' second quarter century team. He's about to play his 800th career game, which is kind of astounding for a player like him. Drafted as late as he was, of the size that he is, it never seemed like in, at the beginning of his career, or at least when he was drafted, that this would ever be possible. And it's an incredible testament to the player that he is, that it was possible, that he is in a situation where not only is he playing his 800th career game, it's all with one team. That's pretty rare nowadays. Where are you at on sort of Brendan Gallagher's career arc? It's been really fascinating to follow. He started as a rookie, came in, was I think he was second place for the Calder that year, only behind Jonathan Huberdeau. He developed into like a 30-goal scorer for a couple years, and the injuries have kind of taken their toll, and now he's had to reinvent himself a little bit. And I think he's doing a pretty good job. Where are you at on Brendan Gallagher at this moment?
Honestly, I've been quite surprised this year. I thought we had a lot of debate last year on the show about, what are they doing with him? He gets paid a lot. Why is he playing when he's clearly injured, et cetera, et cetera. I like that he's been able to evolve. He's also the only remaining Canadiens player who was on that team that almost went to the Stanley Cup final but didn't because of Chris Kreider. Speaking of Chris Kreider, like, people are always like, why can't Canadiens fans let that go? I will not let that go, and I will also not let the Mark Scheifele thing go. That is my right as a sports fan to be petty for as long as I want to, and I will not be policed.
And every fan base has these guys, yes. All of them.
We can boo Chris Kreider whenever.
And, Rangers fans to be doing that is laughable.
The Potvin sucks chant.
The Potvin sucks thing. They were in Montreal doing it.
Exactly. What is that?
Yeah,
it's not even against the right team.
Every fan has these guys. The fact that only the Canadiens seem to take any crap for it is crap in and of itself.
Yeah.
If you're out here telling people to get over it, shut up. That's my response.
Yes. I will not get over it. I will not get over Chara. I will not get over Mark Scheifele, and I will not get over Chris Kreider. Anyway, all of this to say, this is a guy who has lived some of the most fun and some of the worst years over the course of his decade-ish with the team. A little bit over a decade, actually. I think this is going to be his 12th season, if I'm not mistaken.
Sounds right.
Yeah. So he has seen he played with that core, really, really important. He played with that core that had it been kept intact, we wouldn't have had some lean years in between, 10 years ago and now. And I think the thing that's been really, really interesting is that he refuses to give up on himself. And even if everyone else has given up on him, right? Like we've talked a lot about his story, like even making it to the NHL, like, coming in second for the Calder voting. You have to have really made an impact after coming out of nowhere, right? Like that story is an incredible story. But you can't deny the fact that like he played so hard that he sacrificed his body for a lot of fruitless Canadians like hopes, right?
Yeah.
And so you have to give him his flowers for that. You have to commend him for that. You have to thank him for that. But I really do think that, you were talking about how the medical staff this year has a better assessment of when people come back and stuff. I do feel that he was able to get away with a lot of, I want to come back earlier, because of people's respect for him, because he was that kind of player, right? I think it's better now that he's probably getting better advice. He's grown up now. He's married. He leaves weird comments on his wife's Instagram. Weird puns, not gross comments,
Whom
but
among
like,
us?
but just to me, like the thing where he's still effective after we thought all hope was lost, right? Like there were 2 years where it was rough. Like people wanted him traded. Why did he sign for that much money? Like he's making too much money. I think the fact that he's been able to find that fountain of youth by playing differently. It's not the same Brendan Gallagher we saw in like 2013, 2014 or whatever. He's playing differently, but there's like he's still playing as effectively as he used to, just in a very different way and in a very different role. He's not on that, he's not on that top line anymore.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this term earlier, but he's reinvented himself. The way that he plays is not, you know, too dissimilar from, the way that he used to, at least in the offensive zone. He's kind of the same guy there, not as fleet of foot. Speed was never something that, he had over players. It was the work ethic. It was, I'm going to outwork you to every single puck. I also think that, you mentioned uh, his presence on those teams that were just terrible. And it's become one of the memes that I'm watching for this year. It was a trivia question some time ago about how there are two Montreal Canadiens tied for the top spot all time for goals in losses. And right now, the tie is between Maurice Richard and Brendan Gallagher, both with 78 goals. If Brendan Gallagher scores one more goal in a game the Canadiens lose, he has the all-time record, which goes to show, one, how great he was, and two, how bad the rest of the team was. How so many of those seasons where he was hurt were for nothing. It's kind of frustrating to think about, but at the same time, Gallagher is the perfect win it for him guy, right? When they get into that Stanley Cup window, he'll probably still be around. Maybe his skills will have diminished quite a bit, but he'll be here. The
Yeah.
contract's going to keep him here. He's the perfect guy that you can rally around in that room. Be like, he's been here for 1,000 games at this point. We need to get one for him.
Yeah.
That's a guy that's what they were doing with Shea Weber and Carey Price the last time around. I feel like every Stanley Cup winner has one of those guys. I mean, they've tried it for Corey Perry for like half of the last decade, but it hasn't worked out.
But he at least has one. He's got one. He's good.
That's true. He does have one. It was his rookie year, right? In Anaheim.
Yeah. I feel like Brendan Gallagher is the guy that like Nick Suzuki passes the cup to first.
Oh, 1,000%. Yeah, for sure. I love to get in that talk of like how do they like what the order is, but like the truth is we don't even know who's going to be here outside of like the guys who are too expensive to leave and the core parts of this team.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I really like the way that he's reinvented his game. It's been fun to watch. Especially earlier this year when there was a time where he was scoring at a 30-goal pace, and even then I was sort of like, okay, he's not going to do that forever, which he hasn't, right? That the puck luck ends eventually,
right?
But he's still just as effective. I find it always so funny that he's always on one of the most effective lines, and then the line changes from one year to the next, and it's still one of the most effective lines. It was It was like watching, when the Canadiens had all those defensemen, like Surrey left. Oh, the Canadiens are screwed now. And then it's like, well, Mark Streit left. Oh, they're screwed now. But it was like Markov the entire time. That was like keeping that defense core alive. That's sort of like the vibe Gallagher has had, to a diminished extent that you can have that kind of effect as a forward. But like he's on a lot of really great play driving lines. So, that's sort of my view on him as a Montreal Canadian to this point. Any final parting thoughts on Gallagher through game 800?
I don't know. It would be nice to see if they can win a cup while he's still here.
Yep.
Because he's not like if he retires, he's retiring a Montreal Canadian. He's never playing for any unless he gets like absolutely forced to, which I believe he has no movement, if I'm not mistaken.
Bergevin was handing those out like candy.
Yeah. So like he's only ever going to be a Montreal Canadian in the NHL. Like, I don't even think like after he's done playing, another team will be able to hire him. He'll be like, I'm only going to work for Montreal. But I don't know. I think, it would be nice to see that. And it's not to say that he's always been perfect, right? He's had a lot of moments where I've just been like, Brendan Gallagher, what is wrong with you? What are you thinking? What's going on there? But at the same time, like, I feel like he has really, he has epitomized doing the work.
Yep. No, 1,000%. All right. We will leave Brendan Gallagher there and wish him luck in game 800 and the next couple hundred that are hopefully to follow in a Montreal Canadiens uniform. And we will leave Montreal Canadiens talk for the moment and try to figure out what the Edmonton Oilers thought they were doing with the statement they released on the Connor McDavid suspension. And we'll get into that in just a minute. I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. One of my favorite memories was attending a concert last year. The energy and the excitement were unforgettable. Now, Gametime has made it even easier to get tickets to your favorite events with their new feature, Gametime Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. Recently, I was looking for tickets to an upcoming Habs game using the Gametime app, and with Gametime Picks, I found amazing deals and could even see the view from my seat before buying. The super deal was particularly impressive, offering great seats at unbeatable prices. And the app's all-in pricing shows the total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, Laura, the nightcap on Hockey Day in Canada was the perfect nightcap for this particular Hockey Day in Canada, which was particularly bonkers. It started with that Ottawa-Boston game, which if you didn't watch, you missed out. It was awesome. It was so much fun. Those guys hate each other. Montreal, obviously, we know what happened there. Great theater for those not wearing Montreal Canadiens jerseys, but unfortunately, that is not I. And then they go into the Saturday night game, Edmonton and Vancouver. Vancouver has a 1-goal lead late in the third period. Connor Garland is draped all over Connor McDavid. He admitted to as much to holding him. He just said, yeah, I kind of held him because he knows I'm not going to get a penalty for holding the greatest player in the sport right now. So I'm just going to do it. And he got away with it. Right as the buzzer went, Connor McDavid gets up and cross-checks Connor Garland in the face and has received a 3-game suspension for his efforts. The Oilers decided to on Tuesday night to issue a really weird and pointless statement.
Please read it for our listeners.
I read verbatim. It's pretty short. The Oilers organization is disappointed, and we share in our fans' frustration over the 3-game suspension of our captain, Connor McDavid. We support him through this process, and the organization and our fans look forward to having him back in the lineup versus Seattle next week. Laura, what did the Oilers think they were doing here?
He cross-checked a guy in the face. He didn't not cross-check a guy in the face. He cross-checked a guy in the face. Like, what are you doing, Oilers? Like that like I looked at that and I was like, this is peak Ottawa behavior coming out of Edmonton.
Yeah. Look, I mean, here's the way that you can justify what they said. We've seen a lot of cross checks to the face lately. it's usually 2 games, right? I think about the one Austin Matthews gave to Rasmus Dahlin in that outdoor game. I think of, I can't remember the other one off the top of my head. There was one in the playoffs, Carson Soucy on Connor McDavid, that got him 1 playoff game, which we all know is worth 2 regular season games. So that's another 2-gamer. And yet McDavid gets 3. Okay, let's admit, like, I will come to the conclusion there that it is kind of silly that he got 3 when everybody else got 2, except the Morgan Riley one where Riley cross-checked a guy in the face because he scored a goal funny, which is a different scenario entirely. I will give you that. Yes, it's probably a game too much. Is it worth this? Is it worth all of us laughing at you?
Yeah.
Is it worth, like they said, we stand with our fans' frustration? Do you? Because it seems like you just embarrassed them in front of everybody.
Pretty much.
You know, I get it. Connor McDavid does not draw penalties. He gets the absolute snot beat out of him every time he's on the ice. He cannot buy a call. Do you remember the playoff series? You might not, because the Canadiens were too busy beating the Toronto Maple Leafs that year. I don't know if you remember that, but
when it was 3-1?
It was definitely 3-1, but it was 4-0 in the Jets over the Oilers series. And the Oilers, or the Jets, just got to get away with murder on McDavid the entire series. So I get it. But, like, what does this accomplish? I feel like it's going to hurt their chances of getting calls for Connor McDavid moving forward. That's sort of the double-edged sword of this, is like, oh yeah, you think you know better? Well, guess what? He's never getting a call ever again.
Yeah. I think that, to me, like, I don't know what the thought process was, because, you're criticizing the league, which generally is not looked upon favorably. You didn't specifically criticize officiating in a game, which would be a fine, but it just, like, I think they thought that they were taking a stand. I think they thought that they were, like, starting a revolution of some sort against, like, really, really weird discipline, NHL discipline, right? That's not what happened. They just looked like losers.
And, like, I can only think of 2 times this has happened. This and the Rangers, when they released that statement that got Jeff Gorton fired from the Rangers because he wouldn't release the statement, allegedly. And Dolan said, well, I'll find somebody who will. And they released that statement of, I think it was Tom Wilson bouncing Artemi Panarin's head off the ice like a basketball. Again, justifiably upset. This is not the punk rock you think it is by putting out a media statement.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how you do it. I know, and I'll bring this back to the Canadiens because they get, they get way too many penalty calls. We've kind of admitted that in the past. Yes, they have earned the vast majority of them, but they do get screwed quite often. Everyone says Marty should go yell at the media and take the fine, and yell to the media and take the fine. That doesn't make it better, because now the referees are going to say, oh yeah, you went and cried and you tried to embarrass us. Well, guess what? You're never getting another call. Right. That doesn't work. It just doesn't work.
We're going to call every little thing on the Canadiens as if they're not already. 1,000%. Like, the one thing, like, I do know that GMs can call and, like, ask and express themselves. That's what I would have done if I was Edmonton. It would have been justified for me to go, okay, listen, all I'm seeing is 2 games. Why is my player getting 3 games? Can you justify that when he doesn't have a history, blah, 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 all of that, right? That's the only thing that I think would be legitimate, would be okay to do. Or if, like, people get asked about it, if the team gets asked about it, be like, we understand why the fans are frustrated, and leave it at that.
Yeah, I also think that we're kind of talking out of both sides of our mouth here when we're like, the NHL needs to be tougher on violent plays like this, and then they are. It's like, well, no, not like that. Yeah, that doesn't do anything for me. Just because the others were 2 games each doesn't mean those were right. Right. I think that we're kind of missing the forest for the trees there a bit.
No, I just mean, like, that's the only justifiable action you could take that doesn't embarrass you.
Yeah,
right. I know that private call.
Yeah, I know that they have, like, a moratorium after games. You cannot call the league offices for, I think it's 48 hours after a game, to complain about officiating from that game. They do that as, like, a cool down, so that you're not just, getting on the line and berating somebody who had nothing to do with any of those decisions. But I mean, it's just, I think if you're looking for a consistency out of George Parros and the way that he runs that organization, you'll be looking for the rest of your life. It just doesn't exist there. And I think we kind of have to lower our standards. I know that sucks, but that's the reality of that department. The Department of Player Safety is hilariously named because no, it very is not. Like that is just, it's just not that. We need to get over that. McDavid earned that suspension. I have no other way to say it. He cross-checked a guy in the face. What do you want? All right, we will leave that there. Then we have to move on to our trivia. First, though, Habs for Skull for Thursday. Laura, do you have a guess for Thursday?
I'm going to say Brendan Gallagher just because it's his 800th game.
I was also going to say Brendan Gallagher. So the show is united. Brendan Gallagher scoring in game 800 first for the Montreal Canadiens. All right, let's get to our trivia. Yesterday's question was referencing the quarter century team. Since 2000-2001, how many Montreal Canadiens have recorded 70-point seasons? Laura, do you have the answer?
I think the answer is 5.
Correct. It is 5, and nobody else had it. A lot of people had some of the players, but not all of them. Suzuki last year in 23-24, Domi in 18-19, Thomas Plekanec in 09-10, Alex Kovalev in 07-08, and Saku Koivu, the only player on this list to do it twice, 06-07 and 2002-2003. So not great that that's the only list, but that's why all of those players, with the exception of Max Domi, made that quarter century team. Max Domi just wasn't here long enough. All right, today's trivia question in honor of Brendan Gallagher. Brendan Gallagher will become the 12th player drafted in 2010 to play 800 NHL games. There is one Habs alum drafted in 2010 who has already played 800 games. Who is it? So 2010 draft, one former Montreal Canadien is on that list with 800 games. Gallagher will be the second. Who is that first Montreal Canadien? If you have the answer, send it to us any way you know how to find us. Via email, lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. On TikTok, you can DM us there. You can send us Instagram messages. You can send us messages on Blue Sky. You can find me on Blue Sky at Maybe It's Ian. You can find Laura at The Active Stick. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we will see you guys tomorrow.